Colin McCarthy, you are the Director of Digital Transformation at Promevo, longtime friend of the show, former host of your own show here at Tab Geeks, SaaS Showdown, and also the only person I know that has been using Google Workspace longer than I am, which is an impressive feat. Welcome back to the show.
Yep, thanks, Jesse. Yeah, next year, one of my Google Docs turns 20. Last
Oh, wow.
edited in 2006 when it was a Rightly doc.
Rightly, Doc. That really, really is a throwback. I don't think I started on Rightly. I was on the first version of Google Docs back in the day, but not in Rightly. So you got me beat there.
Yeah, I was very, very happy to be an early adopter before being an early adopter was really a thing.
Yep. Yeah, no, for sure. And that was kind of the beginning of this new era. And we're here today to talk about, as you may have seen in the thumbnail and the title, moving your stack, securing your stack, simplifying your stack, making sure that you are ready for 2026 and building towards that to make sure that, your organization as well is not going to fall prey to some of the, well, relatively avoidable and simple issues other companies have gotten hit with this year.
Yes, it's terrible when you look back at some of the very impactful large scale breaches. I won't call it a hack because it's not really a hack. Nobody's doing a Mr. Robot, dropping USB devices in a car park and compromising your devices or finding a vulnerability in a piece of software, although that does happen.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times it is through a stolen credential. It's through a compromised identity. And I think all of those can be prevented. All of those should be prevented. And it's very much about empowering, inspiring, motivating IT admins to work on some of these security fundamentals, and create a plan now as we get towards the end of the year so that when it comes to 2026, you can say, right, team, this is what we're going to do. These are the things we're going to tackle because for one, we don't want to be a bad headline in the popular press or the tech press. And also, we don't want to have a really bad weekend.
Certainly.
Most of those compromises or security incidents happen on a Friday afternoon, generally before a holiday weekend.
Yep.
I've worked with companies where I have seen, those issues happen, and it does spoil weekends for people when you're having to tackle them. So there are a few key things that people can do, to not be in that state, and I think really raise not only their company's security posture, but their position in the organization as well. That in our sort of IT admin circles, there's always been a lot of talk about this is the time that IT administrators actually have a seat at the table. IT leaders are very much part of the business. I think we've gone from the days of just being a sort of a support establishment or a department. And we even did a webinar in the last couple of weeks where we talked about IT changing from being reactive, just sitting there waiting for the support tickets to come in, to actually being proactive and doing these potentially difficult projects, these transformational change management aspects of their business, because it's the right thing to do. So yeah, happy to talk to you today and help work out a plan, and hopefully everybody will be able to go away with a good playbook of what they need to do.
Yeah, certainly. And there's a couple of really cool, good threads that we can unravel there and pull on a little bit as we go on through the show here. I certainly remember from my IT admin days many a times where somebody did something, they clicked on something, they were on a plane flying away for the weekend, and then next thing you know, you're getting that phone call, you're already on vacation with your family, and somebody deleted 80,000 files by accident or got hit with ransomware or something along those lines. And, to your point there is, yes, it does very often happen on that kind of a long holiday weekend, and it ruins everything for everybody involved and then some, because their families are also affected by that. So certainly something that we really, really want to prioritize here, for our own sanity's sake, as well as for, companies, and companies get hammered in the market when this stuff goes down. So, there's a financial incentive there as well. But I think also it's important to note that today, because of bug bounty programs and the way that the security posture has been shifting over the last decade, or even the last couple of years since COVID, is we've caught a lot of the major things that normally companies would have fallen prey to in the past. And the really big, like, hey, this is a gaping security hole, most of those get patched relatively quickly. And if you are, staying up to date and patching things, and you have your proper defenses, that seems to be less and less of an issue as time goes on. And obviously, as you said, there are still, some that are out there, and you read about ones that Microsoft finds, or, impacts the entire ecosystem, or a nation state is utilizing these hacks for whatever. But for the majority of businesses, they're, especially if they're keeping updated, they're actually falling prey to, people, and people not doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I think what we have to discuss here is actually critical for right now, because that is your last line of defense, and in some ways the thing that you really need to be focusing on right now.
Yeah, there's very much a change in what is perceived as the corporate perimeter. And when you were talking about, those OS level compromises that used to happen, I think back to Windows XP and Windows 7. They were revolutionary OSs at the time, but they also
Certainly.
had a lot of vulnerabilities that were discovered. I know if you put a Windows XP machine on the internet that doesn't have Service Pack 3 installed,
Yep.
it will die within like 30 seconds.
Yep. I was going to ask if you've ever done that.
Yes, yeah, I have foolishly done it. You always have to download the Service Pack 3 and install it on the computer before you put it on the internet. Otherwise, it's a good experiment to see it actually happen, and that's how devices used to get crippled so quickly. But I think from sort of Windows 10 and Windows 11, and certainly the latest versions of Mac, certainly for us IT admins, we don't worry about changing, uploading or reloading a DLL file because it had become, corrupted, or changing any of its values to get something to work. We don't worry about that anymore. But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't be just sitting back and doing nothing. There's a lot of other things we should be focusing on. So that perimeter has changed from being the corporate network on the corporate device to being that user with Office 365, Microsoft 365, or Google Workspace, or any of the applications that people are generally using now for their collaboration. They don't need to sign in to the corporate laptop. You might issue them a lovely shiny black Dell, but they might not want to use it. They might want to use their own personal MacBook that could be a few years old and not running a current patched version of Mac OS, and it can have vulnerabilities on it. And they think, oh, I'm going to use this. This is the device I want to use. I don't need to connect to any corporate resources, and it exposes a vulnerability to the business. And I find too many times some large corporations just focus too much on. Oh, we put all of our XDR software, all of our Cisco. What's the DNS application that would do the filtering? I can't remember what it's called.
Duo? Is there a security one?
Yeah, I'll remember what it's called. That does the DNS filtering for security. They'll put that on a corporate laptop, but then they
Umbrella.
Umbrella. That's it. Umbrella. It was an open source platform, I think, at one point, and then Cisco bought it. Yeah,
It made
Umbrella.
it very much not open source.
No. They'll put they'll focus on all of that security on corporate devices, but then they'll just let their corporate identity, their Okta accounts, sign into any device anywhere in the world with no restrictions. So I think we need to go away from that old. The desktop is in the corporate office is behind a corporate firewall. People have got one account that they sign into. We know where everything is, to everybody's signing in all over the place to multiple applications. So,
Yeah.
and there has been an element of flexibility, and we all know shadow IT has been around for a long time, and it's been ignored or overlooked.
Hmm.
But we're only sort of 6 minutes into this discussion. I am going to mention those two letters that get mentioned in every single podcast: AI, shadow
Boo.
AI. Ooh, shadow AI. You cannot avoid, and you must do something with shadow AI, and that's when you need to really be securing that identity. Locking down what the users can sign into, be aware of what data is being put into potentially free AI platforms,
Hmm.
because those free platforms are wonderful for your users. They can get some of their work done where you might not have a corporate deployed AI platform, but then everything that you put in that free AI platform is being used to train the model. It's being ingested. It could be indexed. So there's a number of
100%.
things. Yeah. So I think we should probably create a mental list of all the things that we need to look at,
Hmm.
and what admins should be looking at to secure themselves for 2026.
Certainly. And the
Um,
frustrating thing about AI, especially, is a lot of the consumer versions of these products end up getting features before the enterprise versions do. And so people are like, oh, I have it on my personal. This is so much more helpful. I'm just going to go and do it there. And then that's how you end up getting company secrets leaked into the database. I think it was Samsung had like their microchip design stolen in the early days of ChatGPT because it just went into the model. It's like, um, those are multi-million-dollar secrets.
yeah, Samsung was the first corporate disclosure, I think, of their information on an AI platform, and that was, I think, only a couple of months after OpenAI launched Chat GPT.
Hmm.
It's the first, but it's the one that everybody cites, and
Yeah.
Samsung will always be known for doing that. And it wasn't through malice; it
Hmm.
was just through they wanted to use the tool to do something useful and helpful for themselves. But I think we as admins we need to we need to be the adults.
Right. No, certainly. And I've seen some of the companies that I work with today, they have a strategy where it's a policy actually that anybody on their IT team, their dev team, if they identify that another platform that they're using for AI has some features and there's a business model version of it, you don't need approval. You just go and you put it on the credit card and they're testing all of them because, today Claude might be the best for certain things, and yesterday it was OpenAI, and tomorrow it's going to be Gemini, right? So
Yeah.
you never really know. You never really want to only go with just one of those, one of those models or one of those tool sets, especially if you are starting to do, more vibe coding or building out tools for folks and letting people build out their own tools and automations and things like that. And so if you can do that for other platforms, great. But if you say no to people, you're likely going to get them going off and doing it on their own. So what are some approaches that companies can do today to kind of keep an eye on that and kind of, bring the shadow AI into the light?
I think it starts with IT being open and accessible, and start having those conversations, and strengthening or building that partnership with those other teams, and be aware that we know you're using tools that the company's not providing you, but there's a risk. We don't want to stop you from doing it. We've just got to have an adult conversation about what you can do, how you're using it. You know, start doing pilot programs. Proof of concepts. Seeing if you can get corporate. I guess short-term corporate accounts so that you don't have to have everybody, putting it individually on a credit card.
Right.
Buy some licenses, slowly do the deployment, and even if you don't have the resources to do that, it's to create an AI policy that just says this is these are the tools that we do allow the use of, whether you're in Office 365 for Copilot or Gemini in Google Workspace. These are the licenses we have. This is what you can use. These are our advisories against using any other platform. If you are using another platform, this is how you can submit that information to IT or the finance department for review and evaluation to see if they're going to be taken up. So it really does start with that element of openness and communication with your colleagues, knocking down the traditional barriers that IT always had. There's always the old stereotype that we're locked in server rooms and we never come out, and we just want to say no to everything. It's
Right.
that doesn't exist anymore. IT is very much part of the business, but create a policy, and then also as IT admins, if you're on Google Workspace, you can go through, and you're on, depending on the SKU that you're on, you get access to the investigation tool. You can go through the logs and you can see who is maybe using OAuth to sign in to those other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get some visibility to what they're using, and then you can talk to them and say, hey, developers, I know you're using XYZ platform because you need to be able to utilizing these tools. Talk to us about what it does, how you want to use it, and let's buy some licenses and deploy it and be able to support it. I think that's very much the change that needs to happen.
Certainly, and I'm a huge fan of Google Workspace, so we're definitely going to circle back to that and talk about, how companies can protect themselves by being on Workspace or even Office 365 if they have to. No, I'm not sponsored by Google, but I am a Google developer expert, as the plaque shows up over there. So, I do have to say things like that. But I want to go back to the boardroom. I imagine that these policies need buy-in from the executive team. What are you looking at in terms of, obviously tell them the risks, but they read the Wall Street Journal, they see this stuff is going on. What's this AI thing? A lot of them don't even know necessarily what is possible with AI. How do you go to the team? Who do you want to, get as allies? Who do you want to convince and ultimately get the big boss CEO to say, yes, this is a problem. This is a strategy. Here's how we want to handle it.
Yeah, so a lot of companies and C-level executives or CEOs know they need to be doing something in AI. They might not particularly know what. They just know they've got to be doing it because everybody else is doing it, and they've obviously seen the headlines themselves. I do find it's very much an operational strategy transformational time with the deployment of AI and AI tools. Anything in Gemini for Google Workspace, changes how we can streamline how we're using Google Workspace. We can be more efficient. We can, be quicker and better at creating documents. Something like Gemini Enterprise and agentic AI and Vertex AI can really transform how traditional business processes are done. So, and I find, a lot of those conversations start or are very well guided and led by the chief operation officer, the chief strategy officer, anybody else in operations, business sort of intelligence, and then also the training and learning teams as well. I think they're the buy-ins to get. You need to get their support and guidance, and guidance from a strategic, trusted partner as well,
Mm-hmm.
because I think this is the time where you can't do everything alone, and I think a lot of admins take a lot of pride, and I always did, with doing a lot of projects myself, and I know a lot of other IT admin colleagues do as well. Putting in new firewalls, deploying new software. But I think some of this sort of raises the skill level that is needed, and also sometimes this is such a large change that some companies just wouldn't have the resources internally, because it's not just deploying something. We can all deploy something. We can always push something out through GPO, or another online policy, and single sign-on, give everybody else an application. But I think this is very much an end user training opportunity. So not only does money need to be invested in the actual AI licenses or the platforms, but a lot of invested in actually helping your staff utilize them. So this is quite possibly, when I have discussions with other colleagues, when they say, how impactful is AI, how much is it going to change? And I often relate it to being like giving everybody a typewriter for the first time.
Yeah.
You had to teach everybody how to touch type, and
Hmm.
or going from using a mechanical typewriter to a word processor. You had to show them, how the GUI worked, how you could save things electronically, but they still had some of the, the underlying skills of knowing how to type. I see this as a continuation of that. It's an advancement in technology, but a lot of training and understanding is really needed to fully utilize it.
Well, certainly, and I have been skilling up on this as well, just trying to make videos and understand this, and questions I get from the consulting I do and stuff. And hardware is fun, hence the rack behind me that I'm
Yep.
constantly building and tinkering and playing with. And a lot of my videos are about hardware, because you get to take something shiny and new out of the box, and learn the new interface and plug it in. But AI is this, pun intended, cloud in the ether, where it just does all these magical things and nobody really knows how, and whatnot. But to your
Yeah.
point, I have used the analogy as well of older technology, and it jumped people forward. Yes, there were repercussions, but overall it was a force multiplier, and that is definitely what we're seeing here. Similar to how accountants were given spreadsheets, now you can't claw them away out of their cold dead hands. They'll never give them up, whereas once upon a time that was shunned, and the same is going to be true for AI today.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it is to take the spreadsheets analogy, having AI in Google Sheets is a game changer for a lot of people to be able to how to analyze their data.
Yeah.
Gemini in the side panel, getting a summary of your sheet, and then giving you suggestions of other questions to ask, or being able to upload it into the Gemini app, and do your initial prompt, and then revising it and asking follow-up questions, building charts is an amazingly different way of doing things, and it's a lot more efficient. We obviously get a lot richer insight, I think, out from than looking at that traditional spreadsheet, and trying to work out how to do a VLOOKUP or a syntax.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it's also important to remember that, those of us who work in IT and are in the tech space, we're constantly hearing about this stuff. It's always, every 10 minutes there's a new breakthrough, and there's a new model, and there's a new app that does this. And especially with vibe coding, everybody's now able to build apps. It's the democratization of software building and design, and it's so much faster now. But for most people outside the sphere, which is still, unfortunately, but still most of the people that work at companies, I wish people were more high tech. They don't have a clue. They see on the news, they see certain things on TV, they
Mm-hmm.
hear about these things, they see advertisements, maybe they read the Wall Street Journal, and they learn about all of these AI companies with insane valuations, but they go, I can't imagine why. Like, I don't understand it. So how do you take a group of people like that in a company, now that you've got your executive buy-in, bring them up to speed without, for lack of a better phrase, scaring the crap out of them?
Uh, yeah, I think that is through conversations with them, identifying how they currently work, what their pain points are, what they think AI can do for them, because it can be quite interesting sometimes when the misinformation that's out there about what AI can do, and what some end users expect it to be able to do for them.
Hmm.
And then find out where their pain points are, where their repetitive tasks can be automated, and look at doing that. But it isn't always a lift and shift. Take today's repetitive task and build an AI solution for it. I think sometimes it is a good opportunity to look at the current task. It's probably the task is being done the way it is based on the current technology, but we shouldn't just do a lift and shift and a recreate. We should actually
Hmm.
look and think, oh, we can do things slightly differently because we have this new AI capability. we
Right.
and,
This is an
and
opportunity.
Yes, yeah. This is an opportunity to re-engineer, reinvent,
Yes.
revitalize existing processes. This is why it is very much a digital transformation.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Hence,
To your title.
part of the part of the title. And then include the human in the loop. We're very much a proponent of utilizing these platforms to make the work that we do more efficient, not replace what we do completely. Because I have seen AI mistakes in automation. There's a lot of horror
Hmm.
stories about that where so I think having the human in the loop to confirm that what is being produced is correct, and then doing the final sort of proofread, and then sending whatever it is, the email, the report, the process on its way is the right way of doing things.
Right. And to your point about that is as we move into this world of agentic AI, you're gonna have this problem where if you don't re-engineer these things, all of those little mistakes or sometimes big mistakes where it's pulling from the wrong place or you've got bad data that it's starting from, bad foundation, that's only gonna get 1,000 times worse because these agents move with a team, what would normally be a team of people, taking weeks, and they do it in minutes, and they're all working off bad data.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you brought up bad data because I've listened to a lot of other podcasts on this subject, and they often, emphasize that the first work you need to do in your transition to AI is understand what data you have, what's in there, the state of it, is it clean? And I've had some clients say, or can AI clean up our data and tell us what's what's
Some
what's
of it.
correct and what's valid? And it's like, well, no, not really. You're going to have to do you're going to have to do the hard work yourself.
Right.
And a lot of clients and other corporations are being sensible, cautious in that deployment because they know that there are risks of deploying an unmanaged, unplanned AI tool on their data with their users because it could be sourcing incorrect answers. This is why something like Google Drive permissions is incredibly important in the world
Hmm.
of AI. As I said, I have a document that was last edited in 2006. I haven't opened it in 20 years. It's probably got stale information in it, but AI would theoretically be able to read that file and could source information from it. And if that's in a corporate environment, end users might be given incorrect information, even as something as simple as company handbooks.
Right.
If an employment policy has changed, even with its number of vacation days or federal holidays, national holidays you get given off, if there's multiple copies of the last 10 years, company handbooks on in your Google Drive, and you point AI at it, Gemini or another platform could answer any question saying, oh yeah, you get 15 days holiday as opposed to 20 days holiday.
And you hit the nail on the head there. There are people that are getting cars for $1 because they're tricking chatbots for auto dealerships into saying, hey, this car costs $1. Or, this was a promotion that was done a year ago and you get $10,000 off, but that government grant or whatever it was that was permitting that before, or, tax rebate, whatnot, is no longer available. So it's not just that it's bad data, it's also going to cost you money and possibly employees.
Yeah, I hadn't heard about that story, but I know about the...
It's recent.
It was, I must have been too. I'll dig that up, or you can put it in the show notes. I know Air Canada fell.
Air Canada's the other example, yep.
Yeah, and Air Canada they had the best of intentions, but they didn't put guardrails on what their AI chatbot could do, and it went and made up a refund policy. Which is
you
brilliant.
Need a refund policy. Here's one. Put it into production. No testing, no requests, nothing.
The thing is, though, we laugh, but we need that hallucination part of AI, because it's what gives us the creativity, and we all need the creativity for creating images and creating text. But then we also need it in a business world. We need it to be incredibly grounded in our data. Right. That's why we're very big fans of Notebook LM and utilizing that inside businesses and other tools around that. So I think that covers a lot of the AI landscape. To recap, have a policy. Look at your audit logs, see where your users are signing in, be open, talk to people, accept the shadow AI is being used, but do something about it. And the one thing to go back to, I remember you said, Jesse, was about people that aren't using Google Workspace or aren't using their tools to the fullest. Mm-hmm. You can use something like context-aware access in Google Workspace enterprise SKUs to really sort of raise up your security posture with regards to where your users can sign in, what devices they can use, some very simple security checks on those devices, minimum OS layer or minimum OS level, etc. Are they an encrypted device? Very important if you're allowing, BYOD, or locking it down and only allowing, corporate devices to be used, which, if you are putting all of your security eggs in the corporate laptop basket, then, be restrictive. Make it that users can only sign in on a corporate device. So that's the other key thing for 2026. Admin should be looking at doing.
Right, and so these are organizations obviously that are using Google Workspace, possibly even Gemini Enterprise if they're really forward thinking in the AI space. That's relatively new, formerly known as Agent. What was it?
Agent Space. So Agent Space is now part of Gemini Enterprise. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that change happened beginning of October.
Yeah, a couple of weeks ago as time of recording here. And, it's very early in the space for all of those things. And so, if you're looking at getting into AI, keep that in the back of your mind, especially if you're a Workspace user, as, hey, this is going to be really powerful as you get into it, but clean your data first.
Yes, yeah. And I think don't be tied up on or hung up on features for today. Because today's features will change. I think it really does come to choosing the right platform, the right platform overall for how you're going to use or what you're going to use for AI, and investing in that. That's what we're seeing a lot of people doing is not just chasing today's features, but picking the overall best platform for the long run.
Right. Well, you want, somebody to invest in while still having the ability to experiment to, the earlier point of having giving or allowing people access to a couple of different platforms as they continue to develop and things like that. But, to your point, yes, you do want to choose one platform to stick with and develop with for the long term.
Yeah, yeah. And this is one of the other things to look at in 2026 is consolidation of features and tooling. I'm in talking to other admins. I see a lot of them are trying to simplify their stack or
Hmm.
get the best value out of their primary collaboration subscription, regardless of what it is. But there's a lot of features within Google Workspace that have become far superior and have been greatly improved in the last few years. So some of those other platforms that people might have got a subscription for no longer really needed. And
Mm.
there's a huge duplication in licensing costs. There's an added complexity that gets added when you have Google Workspace accounts, Zoom accounts, Slack accounts, etc. And yes, for certain functions, those tools might be best, but does everybody in the organization, need that license?
Yeah.
Can what you do in Google Workspace is that a better use of your time and license costs? So I'm seeing a lot of people trying to reduce and move away from some of those other platforms and fully utilize all of the features in the license that they're getting in Google Workspace.
Certainly. And I agree. And if you haven't done that, like COVID ended officially in 2023, the end of 2023, we're entering 2026. There was a ton of shadow IT, a ton of these services and applications and devices purchased, and things were just flying everywhere because that's what you had to do in order to keep the lights on and, well,
Yeah,
some of the doors open. Even if we weren't allowed to go through said doors, you had to keep the doors open. And so much of that just unfortunately doesn't get cleaned up because and this is why a lot of organizations do have their tightest controls around spending, is because these things get bought and then they're just there forever. And to your point
yeah,
about duplicate licenses, I think that's critical going into the new year, especially to take that time, go through, audit, maybe even work with a platform that will list all of your different subscriptions. Some of
hmm,
the credit cards I know that will do that, like the corporate card platforms. There's some other services out there. I'm forgetting the names of them at the moment, but I can maybe throw a couple in the show notes, where essentially it'll list all of the different services that folks in your organization are signed into, or to your point, Colin, using the logs in
yeah,
Workspace to say, okay, what are they logging into with their Google account here, so that we can go through and say, okay, well, this you can use, this you can use, this we don't allow anybody to use. You don't have licenses for these. And then for the things that people are using, oftentimes also I've just reached out to the company just as a cold email saying, hey, I'm the administrator for this company. Here's the proof, etc.
hmm,
Give me a list of all of the users in my company. Say, for example, Adobe. I've had this problem with Adobe in the past, where you can get a list from them, as part of the business licensing team, and you are able to find out that, oh, in fact, you have a whole bunch of people with a bunch of different subscriptions of their own. And I think that, sure, design teams and marketing teams do that in the past, but it's our own folks in IT. And even as this begins to go more mass adoption, other people are going to be signing up for other technology platforms because they did, especially during COVID, where these things were just, yeah, sure, yeah, whatever you need, just go and do it. And a lot of this
yeah.
has not, nobody has really, not nobody, but many people have not taken the chance to clean that up.
Yeah, yeah, and I know trying to uh, run a program to get to remove people from a platform and migrate them over and change them to train them up on using the existing program that you have that might have those features can be a bit of a process. And I know a lot of some admins might not feel like they want to do that, and it's less hassle just to carry on paying that subscription fee.
Hmm.
I think this and along with some of the other areas that admins need to tackle. I think to really raise their career opportunities and themselves professionally inside their organization, they need to take on these hard tasks. They're not impossible. They require some planning. They require some change management. They require communication to end users. They require, support from leadership. They require the support team to be prepared and know how to answer the questions. But I think it is the right thing to do. And there's a whole laundry list of these type of projects that I think admins should take. And you mentioning about COVID, March the 16th of 2020. Everybody with a VPN realized VPNs aren't going to scale, and a VPN is not the answer. I was at the Chrome Summit last week in New York City. Was talking to one of the other attendees. They are part of a sales team for a very, very large online and store realtor. Selling hardware, and they asked me, what are people using for VPN these days? And I was like, who's using a VPN?
Right.
You should be getting rid of them. As we said, the identity is your perimeter. You should be getting away from that whole walled, office, the whole idea that your office is a walled garden and everything behind it is secure. If you do have, legacy applications that, you need to make available, there's the Google Cloud Identity Aware Proxy. There are other platforms from Cloudflare and other companies to zero trustify. If that is a new word, you can obviously zero trust. There's zero trust way of working, where you authenticate often, authenticate always, trust never. I think is the way that marketing goes. Not really marketing, but the ideology.
Right.
So you can make those legacy applications available just across the public internet, and then you don't have to worry about VPN connectivity. And obviously, VPNs only really work if you are focusing on just those corporate devices. But we know that BYOD is prevalent everywhere now.
Mm-hmm. And for a little bit of a history lesson, VPNs were very important when you were just talking about perimeter defense and securing, your borders to make sure that nobody could get in. And once you're in, everything was hunky-dory and everything was open to everybody. And we learned that that's a really bad idea. And so, before then, we had, okay, well, you want to come in from outside, here's a VPN, and you can remote in with your device or whatnot. And nowadays, through one, us realizing that's a terrible idea, and two, the more secure encryption of the general internet, thank you, Google, for forcing that on everybody for the most part, and general just adoption of the industry, you have much less of a risk when you're, say, joining a airport Wi-Fi and logging into your banking app. I mean, sure, there are still risks there, and you want to make sure that you're logging into the actual banking app and not clicking on a link to get into something that was texted to you because you are, you're clearly, this is the fraud department and you're clearly spending them, Egypt somewhere. You're not in Egypt. But, in today's day and age, VPNs generally tend to be used for, in my experience, if you want to access resources that are exclusively hosted in-house, if you have a storage device or if you have an internal, what do you call it, device that you need to print to a large format printer, for example, something along those lines. You generally, for the most part, though, especially with all of us who have been using Google Workspace and Office 365 for years, your apps are virtualized in the browser and it's all encrypted. Like, you don't need and should not really be hosting those things in-house. Host your network infrastructure. I love my Ubiquity network infrastructure. get all the shiny tools in place, lock them down, make sure that the bad guys are not banging on the door, but don't necessarily like why would you want to? That's a lot of work.
Yeah, and VPNs don't really work in today's world of remote work either. Even if people do have an on-premise setup, and they have a primary office. For a lot of the clients that I've spoken to that have that, they still have a large portion of remote workers as well.
Hmm.
And I think VPNs are sort of very much part of that 25-year-old anchor that Active Directory is, where people would be forced to connect to the VPN even if they were remote, because that's how IT would push stuff out through a GPO, the
Yep.
group policy object. I think securing and deploying and managing devices in this day and age needs to move to tools that are a lot more uh, native, internet first, where getting their updates over the air, something like
Hmm.
Jamf for Mac access, Jump Cloud for Windows, Mac, Linux access as well, is a much better way of managing devices. And I think a lot of this goes into that identity part and protecting the identity. You need to have a much more robust mobile device management platform. And when I say mobile, I don't just mean cell phones. When everybody says MDM, they just think Android and iOS.
Yeah.
Now we need to be managing, Windows and Mac devices wherever they are on the internet and pushing out policies to them, which pivots me very nicely to my my very strong viewpoints on least privilege.
All right. Take us away.
Least privilege for hardware devices. So
Hmm.
all admins know about least privilege when it comes to admin access to accounts and platforms. Yeah, you only have the admin rights that you need to do that job or task. But we don't follow the same principle with hardware devices that we give people. Somebody doesn't probably need a full Windows 11 machine or a Mac if they're only working in the browser, certainly in Google Workspace. So why issue them a device that requires extra management, requires an XDR platform, requires antivirus, requires more administration, requires another platform to manage them, another license fee?
Hmm.
Why not use Chrome OS? If you are on Google Workspace and your knowledge workers are only working in a browser, Chrome OS is an amazing platform. I've personally used it for the last, where are we, 11 years now. 2014 I switched and made it my primary OS.
Amazing.
Chrome OS today is not the Chrome OS of
No.
2014. It's the hardware devices and not the Chrome OS devices of 2019 and 2020. I know a lot of schools did struggle with doing remote school on those entry-level Chrome OS devices that schools had.
Yikes.
And I think a lot of possibly some business leaders and business end users, heard about those challenges, and maybe have a less stellar view of Chromebooks. But
Hmm.
today's Chromebooks are absolutely amazing. Wonderful productivity machines. They give you all the tools that you need. And for admins, you really, really do not have to worry about them. There has been zero reported compromises of a Chrome OS device, no malware attacks, no ransomware attacks. So why admins? Why are we not utilizing them more when we can make our lives easier and cheaper?
Yeah, and I actually have one of the original one of 60,000
Ooh,
CR48 prototype Chromebooks from the old days before there was even
wow.
the first Chromebook. I got really lucky. This is like the beginning of my, journey with Google, and I got on the list and I wasn't even living in
Hmm.
the country. My mom's like, "Hey, there's a package from Google here with your name on it." I was like, "No way." And I still have it, still boots. It actually has a
Ah,
physical hardware switch so that you can turn on hacking basically that you can turn on the
right.
ability to install other distros like Ubuntu or whatever
Hmm.
flavor of the day you've got there. Um, but I also have today's modern Chromebooks, and I can definitely agree with you there. They are completely different machines. It has been a total transformation, and I was having an argument with somebody on my live stream this week about they were saying that Chrome OS is not ready for enterprise, and I said, I'm sorry, I got to disagree with you. Chrome OS may
Yeah.
not be ready for your use in enterprise. It may not be ready for extremely specific, high-end, crazy coding or development or 3D CAD devices. But even those, there is some use
Yeah.
capabilities for it. But for the majority of knowledge workers, especially, or field workers, or kiosks or whatnot, it's fantastic for that. And I believe it was highlighted at the Google event you were at was Cameo, where
Hmm.
you can now virtualize your actual on-prem Windows applications and deploy them zero touch to a Chromebook.
Yeah. Yeah. I think by the day we are recording this, I'm pretty sure that Cameo has gone public and is GA, generally available. So yeah, Cameo is a great way of um, improving your VDI experience that your users have. It's
Hmm.
a lot more cost efficient. It's a lot more bandwidth efficient. You're not streaming the whole desktop. You're just streaming the applications that they need. So if you do have those individual use cases, whether it's an Adobe program or a CAD
Hmm.
program or even Excel to get your finance people, off of a Windows machine and get them onto a Chromebook, they can still run, Excel just through Cameo, just being Cameo. I pronounced it wrong. There we go.
Cameo? Which is it? Now
Cameo.
you've got me.
It's called Cameo. Cameo. Cameo.
Cameo.
Cameo.
Yes.
Um,
CA Mayo. Now I'm going to
Cameo.
forever think of
Yes.
it as Google's mayonnaise product. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Cameo.
You just stream the application down
Yeah.
in a very very efficient, secure way.
Hmm.
And with developers, you can with the new Chromebooks run a Linux environment, so you can
Yep.
install the Linux version of Microsoft Visual Code, the Visual Studio, install all your plugins.
Yep.
Any developer who knows how to use the command line can install the Gemini command line interface. I've
Yep.
been doing that on my Chromebook. Yeah, it's very 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 secure and very versatile. But then the other part of that with Chrome, if people do need to have or do want to have a Windows 11 or a Mac device, is to use Chrome Enterprise Premium.
Hmm.
An enterprise browser, along with securing your identity, utilizing your subscriptions to their fullest, and simplifying your stack. I think deploying an enterprise browser like Chrome Enterprise Premium is going to be a must-do activity for 2026. Um,
And
if
for
you look
those that
back,
don't know, what's the difference there with Chrome Enterprise Browser versus just logging into your Google account in Chrome browser on said computer?
so the Chrome Enterprise Premium is an additional SKU license fee on top of your Google Workspace license. There is there is Chrome Enterprise Core, which every Google Workspace admin gets for free. I think it used to be called Chrome Browser something management. Had a very long name, but
Yeah.
you can
Secure
you
browser or something like that.
yeah, I can't remember what it was called. CB, somebody will remember it. Um, but you use a token and you enroll the browser into your admin panel, so you can see the Chrome extensions that are being used, the version. You can put some other restrictions on. It becomes a managed browser. It's a way of managing the browser like you might do with a GPO and an add-on into your Active Directory to push out policies to it. But the Chrome Enterprise Premium allows you to do some advanced DLP. It allows you to put on a watermark to make sure that if anybody was trying to do a screen capture, it's going to show where that data has come from and the user that took it. You can stop people from doing screen captures. You can make it that people can't copy and paste text out from your corporate system, into Notepad or their own personal email account. You can make sure that people can only sign into your corporate account in that Chrome profile, and they can't sign into a personal account. If we look at some of the large compromises that happened in 22 and 23, the LastPass and Okta, I think certainly the Okta compromise, I wouldn't call it it was a breach. It wasn't a hack, it was a breach. The Okta breach was because an end user had signed in to an Okta service in their personal browser, which then had cached the Okta service account login details in their personal Google account, which was then compromised, and then the bad actors had access to the Okta login details. So a Chrome Enterprise Premium solution will really put a very strong ring fence around your end users' corporate identity and the access that they can do. You can stop them from accessing AI platforms that you don't approve of. You can only allow them to access corporate sites. You can make sure that let's say you're using Salesforce, they can't do any screenshots of Salesforce. So they can't steal or download any data. You can specify that any downloads, have to go to a certain area. You can stop them from downloading on unmanaged devices. Only allow them to download on a corporate laptop, etc. It really is the most simplest way to improve the security of your corporation, your accounts, and stop you from having one of those bad weekends that we talked about at the start.
Yeah, and I like the way you put that. It's to expand on it. It's not about the walled garden or securing your enterprise. It's now almost oops, I hit my mic. Sorry. It's almost a shield around the individual end user now, protecting the things that are on their person and the things that they're using directly in their individual data. And to your point, I have a list also of a couple of different breaches and whatnot that was in even the last couple of months. Google has had issues with folks getting into internal data by they breached Salesforce, and then they would call Google employees and use the information there as a social engineering hack to convince them to install a malicious data loader update to their systems, and then that gave them other access. There's been healthcare groups that have gotten hit with ransomware. Coinbase, the cryptocurrency trading platform, was attackers had bribed or compromised the support agents at an overseas company. It wasn't even internal. It was an overseas vendor, and then they were able to view customer dashboards, and then with that data go and launch targeted attacks against those folks. But if you are able to shield and put a actual defense around the individual users, even if they try and do something like that, they're going to be locked down in the system, especially if you're using some of the more advanced features that are available in Google Workspace and other platforms.
Yeah, and I don't, and this is comes down to part of that change management, the communication and changing the way admins work with the business. This has to be deployed and communicated and give users the training that this is not to inhibit you. This is not to try and make life harder. This is to make life more secure, and sort of touting, showcasing all of the compromises that would have been stopped by deploying some of these policies. So I think it would be very difficult for an employee to say, oh, I don't want more security on my corporate account. I don't want to be being forced to use, Chrome Enterprise Premium. I don't want to be forced from, not using any device that I want and have some controls in place. I don't think any employees are going to be able to win that argument, because there's a risk that they would be posing to not only the business but their colleagues as well. So this is all about making the corporate life more secure, making the business, less prone to attack. A lot of security professionals know it's not a case of if, but a case of when.
Yep.
When do they
100%.
When do they have a breach? So if you can do these relatively easy things in the first half of 2026, and you can work with a lot of partners, a lot of Google partners to help with the deployment of these tools, whether it's context-aware access, which is part of the enterprise SKU, which is probably the easiest thing to do, the least disruptive. Chrome Enterprise Core is free, part of the admin panel. Do that, get put it in auditing, just see what's being used where, and then work out a plan and deploy Chrome Enterprise Premium.
Yeah, definitely. So we touched a little bit on tools earlier, and you're bringing that up again now. So this will be our last topic before we wrap up here. What are some of the tools that you use for each of these different tiers?
So the one tool that really does add to managing Google Workspace is our own tool that Promevo has, gPanel. We all know that the admin panel that Google has had a lot of enhancements over the last couple of years. If you've been using Google Workspace since say 2010, the admin panel that we have now is completely different to the admin panel we used to have. But there's a lot of things you can't do. There currently is no automation in the admin panel. If a user leaves Friday at 6 o'clock, you are staying there on Friday at 6 o'clock, and you are doing at least 50 to 60 clicks to secure their account. I think it's more.
God.
It's more than just changing their password. There's a lot of other steps that you need to do to really secure their account and fully deprovision them. With gPanel, we have automations that allow you to create a robust policy for deprovisioning accounts. So when somebody does leave, you can have a simple trigger that just runs the rules engine, and all of those tasks will be done securely for you. Something like transferring their documents to their line manager, etc. Setting an out of office message, signing them out of all of their devices, etc. Wiping their account off of their mobile device. And then the other real key thing is visibility into the accounts. In the admin panel, Google's admin panel, you cannot do a simple thing like set up a signature or change somebody's
Still
out of office message. Have easy visibility into the Google Docs that they own. If somebody goes on vacation and somebody else in their team needs to have access to one of their documents that they hadn't shared, currently in the admin panel, unless you're on like the enterprise SKU with the investigation tool, you can't change the permissions on the documents that they own, so you'd be forced to sign in as that user and lock them out of their account while they're on vacation so you can get to that document. But with gpanel, we have the ability to go in and manage all of those documents, share them, run reports to see which documents are shared publicly. There's a whole bunch of policies that you can create to secure your documents. And when we think of least privilege that we talked about before, to sort of have visibility into somebody's calendar in the admin panel requires quite a high level of admin rights in the standard admin panel, but you can do that with more granular access in gpanel. And also we have over 1,000 different policies or permissions that can be given to an admin. So if you have a first line support desk, second, third, you can create specific profiles just for those teams and give them the access that they need and no more. Whereas in Google's admin panel, yes, there's some very good permissions for like first line support people, but when you get into like second or third line, you end up over permissioning them with access rights, which it is never a good way of operating. So with gpanel, there's a lot more control with that. And there's also my favorite thing, which is automated reports. Instead of going into Google admin panel and running some reports manually, you can just set them up to run at a specific schedule that you want, whether it's something as simple as last login time or, to find out which accounts haven't been used. Some of those sort of repetitive tasks can be a lot simpler using gpanel.
Yeah, certainly. And there's, it used to be that you could just do a lot of things on your own. And to your point earlier, as we move into, small IT teams needing to be able to do a lot more, especially in the age of AI, I think automation is going to be a really killer key feature there that folks should be looking at into 2026 as, in addition to, of course, getting rid of any on-prem, moving stuff to the cloud and protecting the devices and all of the other topics that we've discussed here so far.
Yeah, identity, managing where your users are logging in, getting rid of those VPN connectors, changing the way you're doing, MDM, getting rid of Active Directory. We see a lot of work. We're a partner with Jump Cloud. They're a great solution. Enterprise browsers, people deploying Chrome Enterprise Premium. To sort of not disrupt the way people are working, but really fully securing the way people are working and securing your corporate identity into a very, very managed Chrome profile experience.
Right. Yeah, certainly. And if people want to get started with Chromebooks, I think you have a program for that as well. You were telling me a little bit before the show.
Yes, yeah. There's a Chrome OS Jumpstart program. There's Google provided Jumpstart programs for a lot of what we've talked about. Chrome Enterprise Premium, Chromebooks. We can do workshops for Gemini Enterprise. There's a lot of Gemini for Workspace training that we do. So not only are all of these tools or internal, IT projects that you need to be doing, there's also a lot of end user training that I feel admins need to be thinking about. Certainly with AI, if you're going to deploy any AI tool, you really do need to be investing in the training aspect as well, because using an AI tool is all around the prompt that you put in, and not everybody knows about prompting. There are hundreds of millions of videos on YouTube about prompting. There are a lot of other, there's guidebooks about prompting, but I think really an interactive, instructor-led workshop with your with your employees, with your teammates, very sort of curated and targeted for your specific company and use cases is a very, very good investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, not to get too much into the pitch, but thank you for coming on and providing a lot of value here. I wanted to give you that opportunity there at the end to talk about Promevo, which is a great company, and I'll leave a link in the description and down below. Is there any last thoughts that you wanted to share with folks that we didn't get a chance to?
Um, Only to reach out to myself or other admins if you have if you want to talk through any of these projects. There are communities on LinkedIn, there are communities on Slack and Reddit of admins. Being an admin can be potentially isolating and
Hmm.
daunting. And somebody has gone through all of these projects before and can give you a lot of advice. And none of these projects are impossible, um, but potentially recovering from a breach could be impossible. And recovering from a breach, a compromise, is going to be more costly and take up more company time than doing some of these projects. So
Certainly.
I think this is what I would want to advocate to admins is to do the hard thing and do some of these projects because
Hmm.
it's going to be better and easier in the long run by doing them.
What's the Kennedy line?
Yeah, it was about going to the moon. We decided to go to the moon, but not because we don't need to. Oh, we'll have to put it in. We'll have to mix it in. We do these things not because they are easy, but because they have to be done or something. I don't know.
Right.
I should have researched it. But yeah,
I'll throw in a clip. No worries. I'm sure it's
yeah,
public access there.
yeah. But admins cannot should not avoid doing these projects somewhere or other.
Certainly. Well, Colin, thank you so much. Admins, yes, it is a lonely task and position sometimes. Feel free to reach out. Drop your questions and comments down below. I am happy to forward any of the ones that I can't answer over to Colin and get some answers for you. And if you do want a community, it's a small one, but there is a Tab Geeks community, so I'll leave a link to that down below. And of course, check out Colin and Promevo, and I'll leave a link to Promevo down below. Once again, Colin, great chatting with you. Thanks for coming on.
Yep. Thanks, Jesse. Bye, everyone.